Welcome back to another episode of the Everything Antarctica podcast. I'm Matty Jordan and joined once again by Johnny Harrison. This week we are talking about mouse rounds. This is a concept that's very specific to Scott Base, where Johnny and I have spent some time, but we're going to talk through exactly what mouse rounds are because loads of people have been asking about it. So Johnny, do you want to kick us off? Give us a high-level introduction into what mouse rounds are.
Sure thing. So mouse rounds we typically will only do during the winter months or when we don't have 24-hour comms operations. That's usually manned during the summer months. So once those comms operators finish up for the season, end of summer, they'll hand over to the winter crew typically, and that's when you'll start going on a mouse roster. And a mouse roster can...
So we had 3 fire crews, 6 people per fire crew, but only 17 people. So because we needed 18 to fill our quota for the fire crew, one person stepped in for the crew that had one less person. And you would do that probably once every... I think we did it twice over the whole winter. So it wasn't hugely onerous, but the benefit of that was that we had 3 fire crews instead of 2. So your mouse rounds came up once every 3 weeks, and then 2 weeks throughout the winter you were doing mouse rounds twice. So you would do it on, I believe, the Monday and then the following Sunday. So it worked out pretty well, and I actually quite enjoyed mouse rounds. But generally the person who does mouse rounds is also the person who is running communications for the day. So the typical day for the mouse is a little bit different, a little bit longer than it is for everyone else on station. So yeah, for us, 3 fire crews, 17 people, 1 person that doubled up. So it's 1 person backfilling in every 3 weeks. And for the individual, that only happened twice throughout the winter. So
yeah, nice.
Yeah.
For us, we ended up having only 12 people, and so we had 2 fire crews of 6 people, and so that meant that everyone essentially ended up doing double mouse, usually whatever it was, 6 times. So every 12 weeks you'd be doing it for 2 times. So quite a bit more, but I mean same principle, same concept, right? So it's still, in the scheme of things, by the time you end up taking it over the course of an entire winter, it wasn't that much more. But as you say, it's over and above your standard day job, and so what the comms component of it is that you'll walk around with a radio. I mean, most people in winter will have a radio the whole time anyway, because it's a good way to maintain communications, so you can ask if you need a hand or anything like that. But also what happens is there's a lot more communications as far as if you're leaving station. So in summer we're not so worried about that because it's 24 hours daylight, and generally speaking there's a lot more movement, so the safety side of things, you're a lot more safe.
And warmer as well, right?
Warmer, and completely different conditions. Whereas in winter we need to kind of be like, okay, we need to up our game here. So that's when it's like, we want you to check in every time you're leaving station, or wherever you're leaving, we need you to check in. And then when you're arriving where you said you were going to arrive, you need to check in to tell us that you've arrived. Also, if you're out for a period longer than an hour, we want you to check in every hour. So it's just to make sure that everything's all good. It's no worries, it's not onerous at all, but this is the person that kind of is maintaining a log, so a communications log, to write down, at this time this person called in on the radio, and this is what was essentially the crux of the message that they got across.
Yeah, so typically you would record who it was, when they called, where they called from, and what their future movements were. So a standard radio call would be like, Scott Base, this is Matty. I am departing Scott Base for McMurdo in a Toyota vehicle. So that says to the mouse, okay, Matty, he's on his own, he's in a Toyota, he's going to McMurdo. I know that drive from Scott Base to McMurdo takes 8 minutes. If I don't hear from him in 10 minutes, then I'm probably going to pick up the radio and say, hey, did you get distracted? What's happening here? And that applies for any movement. So it could also be like, I'm going for a walk up Observation Hill. I'm departing Scott Base on foot. So that tells the mouse, okay, that's probably like a 30-minute walk. They'll probably call in when they arrive. So, 30 minutes, expect a call from Matt to say, hey, I've arrived at Observation Hill. Yeah.
And the other part of that as well is the party number or the persons that you're expecting to travel with. So you'd say, a party of 3, so it's me and 2 others, or you'd say, yes, 3 POB persons on board. So then it's like, okay, I know that there's 3 people in that vehicle that Maddie's going in. Cool, excellent. So, and then what that equates to is when you go and look at the sign-out book, you should be able to see those same 3 names saying, right, okay, these 3 people, these are the 2 people that have gone with Maddie, and this is the same vehicle number and the same location that they're going to. It all lines up. So that's another thing that is one of the parts of the mouse rounds, and the mouse's duty for the day is checking that sign-out log, right?
Yeah. So, the sign-out book, again, is just it's a safety aspect that we've got. So whenever you're leaving base, you walk over to the sign-out book, you write your name, you write where you're going, you write what radio you've got, what battery number you've got, what time you expect to be back, and then there's another column for you to tick when you do arrive back on station, so that people know, okay, he went out but he's back, or she's gone out, not back yet but expected back in 15 minutes. So you monitor that throughout the day to make sure that people aren't overdue, either arriving at their destination or coming back. The other thing the mouse does is in the morning, we had a routine at 7 a.m. where we would get up and we would print off the weather for the day. So often the weather report had come through from the meteorologists and the weather folks at McMurdo. So we'd print that off and display it in 2 locations. One of those is right next to the sign-out book. So when people are leaving station, they get an immediate look at the weather. And if the weather for the day is not looking great, it says, in the afternoon there's a storm coming or whatever, but it's 8 a.m. in the morning and people are going to be out for half an hour, then cool, you factor that into your movements for the day. The other one is on the whiteboard, which is just outside the mess, which is the central hub of communications for the whole station. So pretty much the first thing you do, and every time you walk into the mess, you look at the whiteboard, you look at the weather board, and you just have a general download of information that's on there. So the idea is that those weather reports for the day are up before the majority of the station are awake. So you can check that, have in your mind, okay, today's going to be a pretty good day for most of the day, or we're expecting high winds this afternoon around X PM, whatever it is. So you factor that into your movements for the day. And then the mouse, when they're doing that throughout the day, will monitor that weather. So if things are looking like they're turning, they'll jump on the phone to the meteorologists and the weather folks at McMurdo and say, hey, look, the wind's picking up a little bit here. Is this anything for me to be concerned about? We've got 2 people off station. Is now the time to bring them back in, or do we tell them to shelter in place, or do we just monitor and see what happens? And oftentimes, the folks at McMurdo are super responsive, and they'll say, look, it's just going to stay pretty similar to this. Movements are going to be fine. It doesn't look like we're going to be changing weather conditions or anything like that. So that's just another thing for the mouse to keep an eye on, just to communicate those messages back to folks who might be out for a walk and can't check the weather. So maintaining that radio communication is pretty important. So the mouse is all over that throughout the day.
Yeah, cool. So towards what other things are there during the day, and then sort of into the evening, there's a few more responsibilities that the mouse has to tick off?
Yeah, so I like to think of the mouse as the person who puts the base to bed. At the end of the day, most people have wrapped up and kind of gone to bed, or are not going to be moving from their location kind of after about 9 p.m-ish. Most people are pretty settled in. They might be watching a movie, or they might have already gone to bed, or they're having a shower and getting ready for bed and whatever. So the mouse will do mouse rounds, and the mouse rounds consist of a walk around through the entire base inside and a walk around the external base perimeter and to outbuildings, just to make sure that things like lights are turned off, there's no funny smells, there's no weird sounds, things are in the right place where they're supposed to be, things that were meant to be switched off at the wall are turned off. So you're looking for all sorts of different things. Your vehicles are plugged in to make sure that the block heaters are working and the engines are kept warm. There's no external doors open. All of the external containers are shut. There's no snow blocking all of the doors, and a million other things that you can look at. But for me, the interesting part was my first mouse round, super observant, looked at everything that there possibly was. I knew the location of every tool, of every light switch throughout the entire base, and the first mouse round was a good number of hours. So you get inducted into it by someone else who is very familiar, and they show you all the things that you need to be looking for and what to do if something feels a bit out of place. But by the end, I could walk into any room and say, that hammer has moved 40 centimeters. That's not in the right spot. So you pick it up and you put it back. Or you go, there's normally a flashing red light over there that is not on, and you just know instantly. If you walk into a room and it smells different, you know. If it sounds different, you know. It's like the base becomes part of you. You're so intertwined with everything that's happening everywhere. You can just walk into a room, have a quick glance around and go, I know everything is good. So yeah, walk around inside the base, do a walk around outside the base, make sure everything's all good, and then yeah, is that pretty similar to what you experienced?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess the next thing after that is, depending on if there are still people out and about, so if there's people coming back from McMurdo after that time, then you're just sort of waiting for them to come back and radio in to say that they're done, and then you sort of check the sign and book one last time to make sure that everyone's back on base, and then essentially you can leave your radio on overnight just in case there is any calls, and go to sleep. But depending on whether or not people want to stay, overnight somewhere, there were a couple of other things. So we have at Scott Base, we were quite fortunate in the sense that we've got a little remote camp that is not far away, but far enough away to feel like you're far away, and that's called the Square Frame. And so we're fortunate that we can go out there, and if you've got your day off or something like that, you can it's a good little spot to go and recreate your way out there. So fat bike or ski out to there or whatever, but then you can go stay the night out there as well. So often if people were actually out at the Square Frame overnight or anything like that, it was the mouse's responsibility to leave the radio on, and the people at the Square Frame were expected to do the same as well, because if something was to change in the night, and if something they needed support or vice versa, we could get in touch with each other. So it's just kind of maintaining that level of communication and having that open throughout the evening is quite important. Yeah. And then we also ended up having never ended up needing to use it, but we'd put an alarm outside people's doors. So the mouse clock, did you guys use the mouse clock or anything like that?
We didn't.
Essentially what it boils down to is it used to be something that if people were expecting to come back after the mouse had gone to bed, what you'd do is you'd put a little note on the sign-in box saying, I've set the alarm for, say, 11 o'clock at night, and I've gone to bed. If you're home before that point, it's outside my door. I expect you to come and turn it off. And so the person that was coming home after the mouse had gone to bed could go, yep, oh sweet, go up to the room, grab the clock, take the batteries out of it, put it back at the sign-in desk, and all was well, because that person had made it home and signed in, and it was no worries. And then obviously that also meant that not the entire base was getting woken up if this person didn't miss their sign-in. So that was kind of the way that previously they ran it.
We handed communications over to McMurdo. So they have a 24-hour communication system over there where they've got comms operators that are constantly manning radios. So at the end of the day, if you were going to be out past 11, we hand over to Central Communications, and the mouse would call comms before going to bed and say, hey, I've just checked the sign-out book. There are 3 people out. 2 of them are at McMurdo. 1's at the Square Frame. They're both due back at 8 a.m. tomorrow. You shouldn't expect any radio calls from them throughout the night, but I've asked them to switch to US comms channel in case they need assistance. And they'll say, great, sounds good. If they need anything, we'll let you know. And then if anything happened, they would either page the relevant people at Scott Base or phone us, or there'd be a way to get in touch. So yeah, we handed comms over to McMurdo at 11, and then we picked it back up, or the mouse would pick it up at 7 a.m. the following morning. So that was the way that we managed it, which meant that the mouse got to bed at 11, the next mouse got to wake up at 7, and there was no need for them to be on the radio at sort of whatever time. So yep, it worked quite well.
Yeah, nice. And particularly if you've got 17 people on station, it's sort of a bigger number, so it's kind of a little bit, not harder to manage, but you've got more people wanting to do various things all at the same time, don't you?
Yeah, and people make different friendships and stuff with different folks, and yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it works.
Excellent.
It worked pretty well. So yeah, we're very grateful for the support, and as always, that the folks at McMurdo offered us. So it made our winter yeah, quite easy. It was quite streamlined for the mouse.
Yep, nice.
Yeah.
What other mouse duties and other bits and pieces can you think of for us for our winter? We ended up having the mouse would help the chef and do the chef's dishes. So often they would, be okay, right, the dinner dishes in particular, and after lunch just kind of give the chef a hand and do some of those bigger bits of dishes. Which again, when you're sort of doing it once in a while, it doesn't really matter. Chip in and hey, I mean, in the scheme of things, it's pretty minimal tasking, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, we did a similar thing. So we had the person who was on the mouse and then the person who was on the mouse the night before.
Mm-hmm.
Those two would team up and they would do the dishes, clean the kitchen, scrub the floors, wipe down the tables, which meant that the chef wasn't working super late at the end of the dinner service. They worked a regular 8 hours, 9 hours, same as everybody else. So yeah, it was those two people, the mouse and the previous mouse, that would help out. So when you're the mouse, you've got a helper, and then the following night you help out as well, which means there's always two people that are assisting with the cleanup. But it's just a nice thing to do because the chef's been working really hard preparing meals for a whole bunch of people, and yeah, it's just a nice thing to do to keep the place clean and tidy, and yeah, instills a good routine for folks. So something else to do when you're on mouse as well, because you can't leave the station when you're on the mouse. You are on duty the week that you're on mouse, so it's no skin off your back to just help out a few places around the base because you're not going anywhere anyway.
It's all part of being in the community, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Another thing that a lot of the other stations also do a similar thing, and often it's not necessarily called mouse rounds.
Yep.
But the Australian stations have a similar thing where, and so do the British stations. So it's kind of adapting to what you've got in your location. But when we say mouse rounds, a lot of people are kind of like, oh, are there mice down there that we have to be chasing down the corridor? No, that's not the case. No. So many stations call it different things, but for us, we call it mouse rounds.
Yeah, it just comes down to safety at the end of the day and looking out for the other people that you're living down there with, right? You just want to make sure that people are safe at the end of the day and they get home safe and everything's all good. So it's a very small sacrifice to do this once every couple of weeks to make sure that other folks are safe. So yeah,
nice,
cool. We hope you've learnt a few things about mouse rounds. I know this is quite a niche topic and quite unique to the location that we were in, but after I've put up a few videos about mouse rounds and what it is that we get up to, people have asked for more information. So hopefully that's given you a good idea about what it is that we do and how we help out, how the community all gets together and does the mouse rounds and shares the load around. So thanks for listening to another week of the Everything Antarctica podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode. That's it for today's episode of the Everything Antarctica podcast. Thanks for listening. If you want to find out more about us as hosts, you can find us on Instagram at Matty K. Jordan and at Johnny Harrison NZ. We're also on socials. You can find us at Everything Antarctica. This episode will be released on all streaming platforms and the long form video will be found on YouTube. Check us out wherever you listen to your podcasts.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating. This will really help us in our mission to make this podcast as good as it possibly can be. Please share this episode with your friends and social networks so we can spread the word to more people.
Until next time, stay cool.